The Lazarus Project is back, and with Season 2. The idea here is very clearly to deliver something bigger, better, and far more elaborate than what was presented the first time around. And boy, does it deliver! With more complications, more characters, and a much more elaborate world-ending plot, the moral line between right and wrong has never been so gray. The story picks up back in George's apartment. Shiv is shot right at the start of the new loop. Sarah remembers everything, and the Lazarus Project are in crisis. They need to try and find a way to save time before it completely degrades and wipes everything out in the process. If you'll remember, Janet was flung back to 2012 at the end of Season 1, and she plays a big part in how the story pans out this time around. Her journey sees her working with Delta Gray, a woman who seems to have found a way to create a natural time machine that could undo all the work that the Lazarus Project have been doing. However, with the time loop spiraling out of control, the new plan comes from rounding up 6 scientists involved in creating this time machine with Dr. Gray, recruiting them to create a new machine for the Lazarus Project in the present, and then use that to go back, save Janet, and stop the original from being created. Phew. As one may expect, things get very complicated very quickly. The first half of this series zips around at lightning pace, with plenty of globe-trotting adventures jumping from Shanghai and Tokyo across to Switzerland and Morocco. It works well in the context of the series, but with numerous loops to reverse time and start things again, it does lower the stakes considerably. After all, if someone dies, we can just restart everything. There's certainly a bit of tongue-in-cheek humor surrounding this though, with Archie and Zhang tasked with infiltrating a specific lab to grab a serum needed to help with this time machine malarkey. Along the way though, they find themselves having to repeat the process a few times thanks to some humorous mishaps. This humor is something that pops up for the first half of the series, and at times, it does feel in danger of undermining the stakes of the mission these guys are tasked with completing. Thankfully, the writers seem to have worked this out, because the second half of the show in particular really steps things up. The humor is dialed right down, and there are new ideas introduced that racket up the tension and drama in a big way. By the end of the season, it's clear that there's a fair few contrivances and plot holes that still need to be ironed out. But given how complicated time travel is to get right on the small screen, some of that can be forgiven thanks to the character writing. This certainly isn't a dark, but it does have some neat ideas that coincide with that show to make for a triumphant follow-up to the first series. What's particularly interesting here, though, is the dynamic between two different sides of the same coin, and the moral dilemmas that stem from that. Sarah and George are the main drivers of this, with the pair engaging in some fascinating debates about the nature of traveling back in time and how that aligns with fate and destiny. These scenes ultimately serve as a foundation for late drama with the pair. Similarly, there's also a good deal of development done for Shiv, Janet, and Ribrov too. In between the main narrative drive to push the plot forward are little opportunities to fill in the blanks through the eyes of individual characters. An entire chapter is dedicated to seeing Shiv's point of view to events, while another follows Janet. While Archie is here and does get some confliction thrown into her story, there's surprisingly not much substance to it after the halfway point of the season, which is a bit of a shame. These gripes aside though, Lazarus Project certainly does what it sets out to accomplish. This is a rip-roaring time travel adventure that ups the stakes from the first season, while changing the game ever so slightly to keep things fresh and exciting. It's not perfect, and in some ways, this isn't quite as tightly constructed as the first, but it's still a very enjoyable series and well worth a watch.